Afternoon, and to give you a little brief as to what's been happening for the last 10 or 12 days I've been away, and to probably take a couple of questions from you as we start the week. I traveled with the delegation, or should I say two delegations. One, first delegation I traveled with to Ghana, as you would have been told before. I had received an invitation from the Asantehene to be the guest of honor at his 25th Silver Jubilee celebrations in Ghana, which to the people of Ghana is a very big and historic event. And for those of you who have managed to take any time to look at the important social, cultural, and economic aspects of Ghana, you would see that this whole return into the public view of the Golden Stool in Ghana is a huge event relating to the 6 wars that the Ashanti fought against the British and predated the independence of Ghana. You would also remember that on becoming independent, it was recognized that the role of an outstanding Trinidad and Tobago intellectual, George Padmore, alongside the efforts of CLR James, had a lot to do with Ghana becoming the first African country to become independent from British colonial rule. To that extent, George Padmore's library in Ghana is one of the must-visit, must-see places for Trinidad and Tobago citizens and people of the colonial world. So, ladies and gentlemen, we've had this relationship with Ghana, and under the Patrick Manning administration, I remember being in the cabinet, and we took a deliberate decision to give Trinidad and Tobago the opportunity to grow outside our borders. And one of the places that we looked for this opportunity to grow is in Ghana, where Ghana is a gateway of 34 million people with access to another 200 million. For those of you who pay attention to what is happening in Trinidad and Tobago and the efforts that we have been making to give ourselves an opportunity to maintain the gains that we've made as a nation, and not only maintain them, but give ourselves the opportunity to grow, you would see that our resource base, largely influenced by wasting hydrocarbons, has been reducing over time. We have pretty much almost maxed out our presence in CARICOM as a market. And for those who pay attention to what our future is likely to be in the medium and long term, that we have to look outside our borders. We'll do everything that we can within the border, but there comes a time when you begin to understand that there are limits to what can happen within your own border, especially if you are and have been a trading nation and your fortunes and your revenues have largely been influenced by international trade. So those of us in the cabinet to whom that responsibility falls, we have been looking at that. And we have over the last decade or more spent some significant time growing our presence in Ghana. We've had some successes and we've had some disappointments. Initially, what we hoped to have happened in the early days, because of the experience that we've had and the base that we have here in Trinidad and Tobago, when Ghana discovered and started producing natural gas, we positioned ourselves to provide the services to Ghana in managing that business. Unfortunately, there were some people in Trinidad and Tobago who didn't understand that, and we lost that opportunity. We didn't give up then. We continued to use our strength in that area to present ourselves to the Ghanaian And eventually, we got to a situation where some of our companies have been seriously considered for some of that business. When I accepted the invitation to go on this trip, one of the things that I had in mind was to continue to be the country's #1 salesman and to present our country to people with whom we have an interest, especially the decision makers. A lot of work has been going on in the back room with respect to getting some of the business in Ghana. And there's a contract that is in the pipeline, very close to being signed, and we literally have to work our way through to the point of signature. Hopefully, in the not too distant future, one of our local companies will conclude that arrangement and we will begin to get involved in the way that we had anticipated many years ago. You also would know that our major bank, Republic Bank, is now probably has a wider footprint in Ghana than it has in Trinidad and Tobago. I'm advised that the bank now has more branches in Ghana than you have in Trinidad and Tobago. But you shouldn't be surprised by that. Our population is 1.3 million people. The Ashanti Kingdom alone is 2.5 million people. And Ghana has a population of 34 million people. And as we get into that population, which is very much like Trinidad and Tobago, former British colony, speaks English, has the same kinds of legal and social systems, and have a relationship with Trinidad and Tobago dating back to its independence, it is a good place to find business. So, and if we get 5%, 10% of the business there, it's far larger than, in some instances, CARICOM. It's a little distance away, so it takes some effort to get there. But we also have to let them know who we are. Because if we don't present ourselves to them, we are not really very well known by very many people. At the level of the diplomats in Washington and New York and London and so in the Commonwealth, yes, we're very close with Ghana, we're very close with, but the average Ghanaian in the street does not know anything about Trinidad and Tobago. So if we start manufacturing goods here and selling it in Ghana, whether it is biscuits or tinkers, whatever it is, made in Trinidad and Tobago must mean something to the purchaser. And that is why we have kept this contact and this high profiling of ourselves in Ghana. The last trip I made to Ghana, it was at the invitation of the Ghanaian president then, where I functioned as the feature head of government at Ghana's 63rd anniversary. I went there and the audience I addressed was a stadium of 80,000 people or something like that. It was the largest audience I've ever addressed, speaking about Trinidad and Tobago in Ghana, and being well received because they are anxious to know us in the diaspora. And they want to work with us, and they want to be a part of what we are, and inviting us to be a part of who they are. And that's where this visit and spending a couple of days with the Asantehene in the palace and around Kumasi does. It puts our name out there, it puts our country out there in front of people who we really want to be our friends and neighbors and business associates. It also has the possibility of inviting investments into Trinidad and Tobago. Not only that we invest there and grow in their economy, but they are investing elsewhere in the world, and they would like to be out here as well. So we invite them to do that. So it was a very successful visit. Quite hot. I mean, we are in the when it gets to 40 degrees, we're not accustomed to that. So it was a little stressful here and there, but quite successful. And I was able to have direct meetings with the president on matters in the pipeline. And incidentally, just before I got there, we did send a trade mission led by Minister Paula Gopi-Schoon. A very large trade mission went to Ghana in furtherance of all that I've just said. So we are, in fact, working on following up that. And I expect that in the next couple of weeks or so, a very high-level, small but high-level delegation would visit Trinidad and Tobago, again in furtherance of some of the business that is in the pipeline. After that visit, we went to Mumbai, and that again is another attempt to give ourselves the opportunity to be a part of something bigger, something larger. In this case, my visit specifically had to do with meeting. I was invited there by the family that owns the Reliance Group, which is probably the largest business in India. And the family is probably the richest family in India. As it said, I haven't seen the numbers myself, but that's the general feeling. But I did spend the time in India, in Jamnagar, which has the largest oil refinery and petrochemical complex in the world, owned by this family, and it was quite elucidating to see what we can discuss and what possibilities exist, to see if there are any alignments between us and them. And they are also very large investors in matters of interest to us. And the visit culminated in being exposed to the whole question of sustainable energy and biofuels and technology, all of which reside on a world scale. The phrase that was commonest in the few days I was with them is the largest in the world. Much of what I was dealing with was introduced to me as the largest in the world. So this is where we spent some time. And we made that contact. I want to thank two people who have gone abroad and done well, but didn't leave their country behind. And they were instrumental in opening the door into Mumbai. And that is former West Indies captain Kiran Palad and Dinanath Ramnarayan, because they were the ones who were out there and saw the possibilities for us meeting the people who make these decisions. And the government was quite happy to benefit from these openings, and we took it from there. And Maharashtra is the industrial state of India. Mumbai is the financial capital of India. Jamnagar is the hydrocarbon capital in India. And interesting, this largest oil refinery in the world is in a country that doesn't have much oil. But the way they've gone about it is to be a trader in oil and oil as a raw material, going all the way down to plastics and textiles. And the model is extremely important for a country like Trinidad and Tobago that has those kinds of strictures. It's the model that Japan had used to become the #2 nation in the world, being resource poor, but using the world's resources with business models, bringing it to Japan, picking where you want to have your strengths, knowing your weaknesses, and then Japan became the biggest in the motor car industry in the world in terms of large numbers. And those of us who used to drive Toyota Corolla would remember when Corolla was the biggest car in the world in terms of sales volumes. And you drive your economies like that. And these are the things that governments have to do, but the governments can't do it without the private sector. If the government tries to do it alone, it's going to fail. If the private sector is unwilling, the government has to lead, and you have to find friends and associates, and that is exactly where Trinidad and Tobago is today. We don't talk about it every day because we have to buckle down to the work. There are some people who believe that when the Prime Minister travels abroad, is a holiday, is a vacation. Let me tell you something. If we stay inside of Trinidad and Tobago, listening only to the nonsense that is spoken by uninformed people, we're going to end up in a situation one of these days where we don't have enough to put on the table for the people of this country. We have to look ahead, look way down the road, see what we are doing, support what is going well, prune off what is withered, sow new seeds, and be available to those who can help us either through investment or speaking for and with us. And it's on that basis that I have taken the responsibility to always be available to talk with those who make the decisions. So in this case, it would be interesting that if we do get investment from India, it will be opened as investment through cricket, because a request was made to the government of Trinidad and Tobago for a piece of land to build an academy for cricket in particular. The government looked at it and the cabinet agreed and has so far made a 30-acre plot available to the Reliance Group to build in Trinidad and Tobago a cricket academy, the likes of which I visited. One of the reasons for going to Mumbai was to see what they have built there as their academy and to see what they intend to duplicate here in Trinidad and Tobago. And of course, typical Trinidad and Tobago, you'll hear a comment, well, we already have the Brian Lara Academy, why we want another one? Well, we have the Eastern Main Road. Why do you want the highway to Point Fortin? What is happening here is that cricket, as it exists now, provides opportunities that didn't exist before. Cricket today is a multi-billion-dollar business, and it's an area where we have some strengths, and we have to leverage that to be a part of this international business. The international business requires nurseries to produce players for the cricket that is taking part around the world on an ongoing basis. There are professional billion-dollar leagues now in about 10 countries: Australia, New Zealand, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, in the West Indies, England, India in particular. And we here in the West Indies have some shortcomings. We're not playing enough cricket, we don't have enough facilities, we're not modernized, we're not technically sound. All of those things require money. And these demands to take a place in that game, on that scale, they're coming at a time when all our Caribbean countries have financial strictures. Barbados is in an IMF program. Jamaica has been in one for decades. Probably Trinidad and Tobago is having to keep body and soul together by being as innovative as we can. Guyana is the only area where there's some significant increase in revenues. Unfortunately, Prime Minister Irfan Ali and I are in lockstep and aligned on this matter, and we are committed to ensuring that opportunities that may arise for us in cricket should be taken. So an academy in Trinidad and Tobago, funded by Indian investment, producing cricketers in Trinidad and Tobago, is not only for our benefit, but it may be a significant piece of the jigsaw puzzle in West Indies cricket. Because the whole intention is to give our youth the opportunity to show talent in the systems that we now have, nurture that talent, and have that talent available to feed players in careers that they would have chosen into the world business. That's where we have to go. And along those lines, I should tell you that the government is encouraged. We don't want to repeat what has happened with the last set of world-class players we had, who spent their post-playing era complaining about how they have been left out of the support and growth of the game. So we here in Trinidad and Tobago, I think by now we should have had Anisa Mohammed and Marisa Aguilera at Sport TT to work with our young people here to ensure that the game is encouraged in our schools, in our communities, and to go into these academies that will arise in our country, and we will ensure that Trinidad and Tobago plays its role in supporting and strengthening and growing West Indies cricket, because we want to participate in this billion-dollar industry. And I was particularly pleased, I can tell you, I had the Minister of Sport with me, and the couple of days we spent with the Reliance Group and the Ambani family, and she's still in awe. So we would say to you that there's a lot to be had in our relationship with India, in our relationship with Ghana. I'm now expecting two groups to follow me back to Trinidad and Tobago, one from Ghana, from the gas industry that we've been looking at there, and a group of interested, very successful business leaders who will come to Trinidad and Tobago in the next few weeks to have a look at us. It's one thing to talk to them out there. It's one thing for them to be interested out there. It's another thing for them to come here, see what we really are, see who we really are, what the possibilities exist for them to invest here, where we are aligned, and together our post-colonial period can work to the benefit of all of us. And that is what I've been up to. And that's what I continue to do. Meet, talk to, work with those who make the decisions about our interests and our future. If you have any questions about that or any other matter, I've been away for a few days. If you have any questions, I'll try to answer them. Just identify yourself, please.
Honorable Prime Minister Rajiv Surat Singh, CNC3 Sport. You spoke about the shortcomings of the West Indies, right? And I just wanted to know, what was your IPL experience like in contrast to the CPL that you are accustomed to?
Oh, the experience of being in the Wankhede Stadium is, it's like being in the Brian Lara Stadium, but I still maintain that the Brian Lara finals, there's still the best party in cricket. But it's, in India, the scale of everything is different. If I could afford it, or if I could bring it about, I would let everybody in Trinidad and Tobago have an opportunity to be in India for 10 minutes, right? In India, the scale of everything is different. And it puts you in a position to appreciate your strengths, your weaknesses, and your possibilities. And the people of India are in many ways quite different to the impression that some people here in Trinidad and Tobago give you about people of India. But Trinidad and Tobago, we go to India as part of one friend visiting another friend. And that is how we have been received. As a matter of fact, I should tell you that my visit was planned as a low-key visit to Maharashtra, Mumbai, visiting a family, business, and so on. On the way, that status was changed. Prime Minister Modi was very insistent that the status of the visit had to be of a certain level, and it changed to the point where we were received in a way well beyond any expectation that we would have had. And it was very successful, and I would say that it was tiring, but time well spent, and we've made a very, very good progress in meeting people, encouraging them to work with Trinidad and Tobago.
Gentleman, CNC3. Prime Minister, I'll continue on with sport for a little bit. In terms of the academy, do we have an estimated cost, estimated time it would begin and end it?
No, the numbers, actually, the architect came down. An architect was sent here a few weeks ago when we had the first set of discussions. The costs would only be determined when you get the architectural renderings and some costings put on that. They're close to being able to provide us with the first set of drawings that they intend to pursue. Right now, what is happening is that the lease here in Trinidad and Tobago for the land is being finalized. There's a small cabinet subcommittee that's dealing with that. The survey, I think, is either underway or completed. Land has to be surveyed while the drawings are being done in India. When we get a structure conceptualized in drawings, then we'll be nearer to that. But what we do have is a commitment. It's a commitment to what is likely to happen on the premises here in Trinidad and Tobago. I was out with young Akash Ambani, who literally showed me the 3 fields in Mumbai. This is what I was taken to see what they've done in their academy. They have an academy there, and this is what we conceptualize for something, not on the same scale, but the same concept in Trinidad. So we don't have a number yet, but we have a commitment to a certain standard.
And with regards to the discussion, what about workforce and work labor? Would it be from India, half from Trinidad, all from Trinidad? That discussion has
we certainly will get technical help, and it's be run by the investor, but there's not the kind of project that requires any in importation of labor. We have lots. We can do all of that here in Trinidad and Tobago. In fact, it will be opportunities for local people to get involved in the construction, but the technical work could be done in terms of as the architectural work is being done now by them. So it will be a combination of both, but labor would be local.
Good afternoon, Prime Bihari, EZPnews.com. Prime Minister, when you were in India, you visited the refinery operations, in of reliance in solar power, etc. There is talk that maybe Reliance is interested in the Point of Bay refinery. Was any discussion taking place with that?
Not specifically, but the whole question of us having a refinery, as a matter of fact, all that was mentioned about that is that we do have a refinery and we out. RFPs are out. We expect sometime in the not too distant future to be able to look at proposals, and if they do, they've heard about it in mentioning, and if they're interested, they would put in something. I don't know that that is a focus at this point in time, but it's the kind of business. You see, their business model is based on bringing in raw material to what is in effect the largest refinery in the world. So they're not short of refining capacity. They're doing 1.4 million barrels refining per day. So our little refinery is not a key thing in that model. And they then move from their crude through the complete integration all the way down through petrochemicals to polypropylenes and so on. So it's not, they're not the key interest in the refinery, but they are investors. So we don't know if they see an opportunity and want to put in a proposal. But there are others who have done that. I understand that we have some proposals in hand. Some are repeated recycling proposals which have been found to be unacceptable, but we hope that as we go out, I spoke to the minister a few days ago and he tells me that there's some deadline at the end of this month for us to look at what is out there. And so we might be able to tell you something in the not too distant future.
The gas deal in Ghana, can you tell us a little more about that? Which is the company that
Phoenix Park, the gas processing company.
And is that they giving us gas, or we are giving gas to them?
No,
what is the...
It's doing gas business in Ghana.
Okay. And how soon do you think that will come to fruition?
Well, I'm hoping after all that we've done and the last conversations we've had, I'm hoping that some kind of contract between the various parties could be signed in a matter of weeks. So that's what I'm hoping.
Sticking on the business front, Prime Minister, could you identify the Ghanaian businesses or businessmen who will be coming to Trinidad? Or what exactly their business
Ghana
model?
Gas is a state company, and the chairman and a small delegation should be here during the first week of June. Ghana Gas is the state company that is of interest to us because they have assets in Ghana which they are now operationalizing. And that's where initially, our intention was to try to be the gas processor in Ghana, but we had a little bit of a hiccup here in Trinidad with that, and so we did lose an opportunity there, but we didn't give up on that.
You also talk of local businesses going to Ghana. Could you elaborate as to who those?
I don't want to call out business names to put pressure on people if they. But Minister Paula Gopiskun had led a delegation, and if you really want a bit more on who actually went and talking to them and find out what came out of it, I suggest that you talk to that minister, and I'm sure she'd be able to give you a little more detail of how that went. What I did see, though, was that they had a very large number of meetings with business houses in Ghana where they put the opportunities to them for handling Trinidad and Tobago manufactured products.
Good afternoon, Prime Minister. Jules Brown, TV6 News. I'm just wondering, given your observations while you were in Mumbai let's say, discussions about cricket, any comparisons in terms of how business is done with the IPL as opposed to the CPL?
The only comparison is that they seem to be in control of their destiny and we not. Because I'm saying it again, I do not think that we are well positioned where that is concerned. And I am trusting that those who are now involved with CPL would understand that cricket to us is more than just a game, and it goes beyond the boundary. And if we believe that things are not right, currently, I have heard complaints in Trinidad and Tobago, I've heard complaints in Guyana, I've heard complaints in Barbados, and I dare say other places. And the conversation is being carried by the governments of these regions, and it will do those who are involved well to understand that if the governments representing the people are not happy with the arrangements, it would do us all well to sit down and review it. And that is where Trinidad and Tobago stands on this matter.
And as we are one of Trinidad and Tobago, that is one of the CARICOM states hosting the Cricket World Cup, there have been media reports about issues of threat assessments and so on.
But what?
Threat assessments and so on concerning the Cricket World Cup. Have you had any updated?
No, those are things that are normally handled behind closed doors, behind the scenes. We have CARICOM Impacts where there are experts whose job it is to look at that. It's not something that you have in front of you every day as a sheet of paper. But certainly, being responsible, any event like that requires a certain amount of looking over shoulder and looking ahead and trying to anticipate and to reduce or eliminate certain risks. All that has been done. The legal things, the national security concerns, all this work has been going on to be effective and fit for purpose at the time of the event. So those things are in place, right? And what needs to be done, I'm satisfied that that has been done, and we are about to carry out the event that we planned. It's not a yesterday thing. The planning has been going on for quite some time. And as you know, there's a subcommittee of the CARICOM on cricket, which was chaired first by Prime Minister Keith Mitchell in recent times. That's when I first started functioning on that committee as a member with him. Then it was chaired by Prime Minister Ralph Gonsalves of St. Vincent, and now I'm chairing that committee. And we are serious about trying to provide some kind of a roadmap, some kind of a plan, some kind of opportunity for reinvigorating West Indies cricket. And we want to do it in a way that is sustained and in a way that it provides us with the opportunity. One of the things that we are all quite concerned and distressed about is the minimizing of cricket as we go along, where our international team has not been as successful as we expected it to be at this time, and also the deterioration of club cricket, the competition in schools for children, the tension, where not all our boys are in fact exposed to cricket or in sport for that matter. We have in Trinidad and Tobago boys' schools where not much is played. We think we need to re-inject that enthusiasm, and there's a role for the government and there's a role for West Indies cricket, and the investments that are required have to be made. And we are talking about the history of cricket as part of our culture that needs not be abandoned and in fact should be taught in schools, because it has a lot of lessons for us in dealing with other things.
The issue of national security in general, yesterday we heard an announcement from the National Security Ministry that the head of the SSA, that the cabinet made a determination for that contract to be terminated. Could you give any sense or a little more information to the public with regard to this issue, and any update on the ongoing audit of the SSE?
Only to say that we have been blindsided by this agency But fortunately, the government was able to be informed at an early stage, and we approached it with vigor and commitment. There is an ongoing, very serious investigation that is taking place. And as I said before, some of what has been unearthed in this investigation has been quite troublesome. And there are impressions of criminal conduct which are being investigated by those in authority to do that, and where it fell to the cabinet to act on persons who were having the support of the cabinet to do their jobs. If they fell short in that way, the cabinet did not hesitate to act, and we expect that we will rectify it and return the agency to its purpose.
Alexander Bruzol from Trinidad Express. Honorable Prime Minister, forgive me from straying away from the topic.
If you can speak a little loudly, I'll appreciate that.
Forgive me from straying away from the topics of investment and diversification, but unfortunately yesterday we had the 10th homicide recorded in Tobago. And you being a Tobagonian, we just are trying to get your opinions on the crime situation that has happened, that's going on right now, and if there's been any plans to meet with Mr. Farley, because he's been calling recently to meet with you, to meet with the government, to try and treat with the crime situation before it escalates further than what it already is.
I'm not aware of, the confluences that you're making there. I'm not aware. The government is not fighting crime or looking at crime in the context of meeting with Farley. The Ministry of National Security is the Ministry of National Security of Trinidad and Tobago. What we're concerned about is the fact that the criminals are not confined to any one part of the country. They see the nation as their playground, and they look for opportunities to conduct their nefarious activity. And my meeting with Mr. Farley is not a consideration for them. What we have to ensure is that Trinidad and Tobago gets the best arrangement for securing its population in response to rampant criminal conduct by a growing number of persons in the society. We have agencies for that, and they function in Trinidad and Tobago. I'm a little disappointed to see that Tobago is becoming like the rest of the nation, because given its small community, its semi-isolation, I was expecting that we would have been a little more on top of that, but the criminals have freedom of movement, freedom of association, and they look for opportunities in Tobago. And unfortunately, some of the negatives that are happening here in Trinidad are now happening in Tobago, because the same people or the same type of people doing the same type of thing are choosing to do it in Tobago. But I trust that the police in Tobago and the security services and the THA, insofar as they could do anything about it, the THA, because national security is a central government responsibility, and we will discharge that responsibility. And we are prepared to work with any and all citizens, agencies and entities to ensure that the criminals do not prevail and continue to terrorize us indefinitely.
And just a quick follow-up on Mr. Brown's question. I was just wondering if by chance, I know Cabinet made the decision yesterday to remove Mr. Best, but I was wondering if there was any conversations or thoughts on who would be replacing him permanently.
Well, the replacement has been taken care of a long time. I mean, when we realized that we had a problem of this nature, the government acted swiftly, and there's an acting appointment there with all the authorities of the office, and for the time being that will be satisfactory as we try to get to the bottom of what was going on in the SSA. I can tell you a lot of what we have discovered is quite troubling, but it being a matter of national security, we will handle it responsibly, and as you would have seen, action has been taken and will be taken along the way. Eventually, there may be changes in the leadership, but Officer Brigadier Spencer right now is as good an officer as we could have had to deal with this situation, and he will continue to hold it for a while.
Hi, Dr. Rowley. Gregory McBurney from the Trinidad Newsday. There's a person who would have introduced Major Best to Pastor Brown, and that person also worked with Brigadier Spencer at the embassy in Washington. We're just wondering if you're aware of that link, and if that link was at all investigated or looked at, or was he, if you all know.
There's a very broad spectrum investigation taking place. I don't know if you may recall when I first spoke about this, I said that an audit is being done of infrastructure, personnel, and processes. That covers everything and everybody. I do know of the officer that you're talking about. That officer has been on station in Washington, but given the concerns that we've had with what has gone on in Trinidad and his connection to it, he has been returned from Washington to Trinidad, and the investigations continue.
Turning to the Tobago issue, just your thoughts on the Chief Secretary's plans to establish a THA police unit.
I couldn't speak to that because I'm not familiar with that, but what I do know is that we have in Trinidad established the police units in the corporations. So if the THA as an entity of that similar nature want to have a local constabulary, I don't see any problem with that.
Right, sticking with the issue of the police, I know while you were away, the Commissioner of Police's contract or tenure would have been extended. One, your thoughts on that, and two, just if you do have one, your general sense of the public sentiment over her performance and the extension.
Well, the cabinet would have looked at all the options that are available and would have made the most reasonable option, which was to extend the commissioner's tenure while the Service Commission go through the, I should say, long and arduous process of finding someone to substantively occupy the post. We were initially hoping that during the period when Mrs. Christopher was there, the commission would have moved to, at some stage, to be able to act earlier. It didn't happen. I came in on inquiry into this. An interpretation was brought to my attention, which I had some difficulty with, when it was being said that you couldn't advertise the position while someone is in the post. I don't know I didn't know that that was a stricture. But the bottom line is, having come to the end of that contract, and the commission, which is the entity that is under law responsible for filling a vacancy when it exists and so on, it virtually came to an automatic position where you had to have someone either continue, as the law permitted, that we, Cabinet had the authority to give the commissioner a one-year extension, and of course the authority elsewhere with the Service Commission. We are in a we get ourselves in tangles here in Trinidad. You know, you talk about public sentiment. One of the public sentiments that you all carried on with here a couple of years ago with all manner of evil was when it was said that the Prime Minister provided information to the Commission about this Office of Commissioner of Police. You all had all kinds of things to say about that, not the least of which is that the Prime Minister mustn't talk to the Commission because that is against the Constitution, and all kinds of interpretation and threats of going to court and so on. And then now, something else is happening now. A commissioner has to be appointed because the contract has ended, and you want to know how the Cabinet is going to make the appointment. An interesting question arises now. Should the Cabinet make that appointment totally oblivious to what the Commission knows or what the Commission is doing? That's the question that turned up. And the Cabinet's position was, does the Commission have any information for us? Now that an appointment has to be made by the Cabinet, which is an extension of the existing contract. So you can't be in one breath if you talk to the commission, it's a breach of the Constitution. And in the other breath, if you make the appointment without the commission's input, then you're just basically stupid and irresponsible. But the cabinet went on to take the responsibility as it has, because when there's conversation taking place in the public, not one of these people have any responsibility for doing anything other than talking. The cabinet has responsibility to make a decision. How do you make that decision? It is my information that the cabinet received information from the commission, which is the entity that has responsibility for the performance and discipline of the commissioner and deputy commissioners. Those are facts. And from the information provided by the commission, extending the commissioner for a year is a reasonable decision. And we expect that the commission will continue to put us in a position when that year would have ended to say that the processes allow us to move to a substantive post after a wide search and someone is appointed where this extension is not required any further. Those are the possibilities, because we put ourselves in these situations by the laws that we've enacted, by the regulations we've enacted, by the authorities that we've distributed. We cannot act outside of the law, the regulation, and the responsibilities. So a lot of the public conversation does not take that into account. They largely emotion. And I would just like to thank Ms. Christopher for the effort that she's made, because I do know that anybody who is there, who has been there, they have become, fair game for the negatives. We had who we had? Let me know how far I go. We had Filbert. He was fired summarily by an attorney general. I don't know how he managed to do that. Then we had Stephen Williams. For years he was doing 6 months, 10 days. Then we had Mr. Jacob. Then we had, the system is just one that does not permit best practice management. That's what it is. And that is what we have to work with. The cabinet can only work within the law. And if it wasn't Ms. Christopher, it would have had to be somebody else. And I dare say, the public conversation would have been probably worse.
Prime Minister, based on what you said there, do you think there is a need for revamping or renewing of laws that would appoint the Commissioner of Police?
All I would say about that is that we might be the only country in the world where the appointment of a Commissioner of Police gives the country so much trouble. I don't know anywhere else where the appointment of a Commissioner of Police causes all this manima and rara.
Do you think the government should remove themselves from the appointment altogether?
The government cannot remove itself from its responsibility. That's the point I was just making. When it's all said and done, the government has the responsibility. The other conversators don't have it.
Are you satisfied in the good grade that was given to the Commissioner of Police by the PSC?
I did not do the analysis, and it is not for me to be satisfied. It is for me to be cognizant of, and for the cabinet to be informed by.
Prime Minister, are you saying then that Mr. Hayward Christopher's extension was done by default?
I did not say that prior. I said the cabinet has the responsibility and the cabinet had to act. And what the cabinet sought to do in influencing its action is to find out from the commission what was the state of their assessment.
In terms of the crime situation in the country, are you satisfied with that?
No, I'm not, and I don't think anybody in the country is.
Prime Minister, just going back to a question you answered from my colleague from Newsday with regards to the officer from Washington. You said he was sent back to Trinidad. When was that done?
No, he wasn't sent back. He was
recalled. When was that done?
That was a few weeks ago.
And are you at all concerned, not casting any aspersions on the name and credibility of Mr. Philip Spencer, but given the proximity that he would have had to Philip Spencer, who is now leading the audit, that there may be some tainting of the investigation?
No, there's no, that doesn't arise.
Just wondering, Prime Minister, any update as we talk about the police service, any update on the special vetted units that you had announced would be part of the law enforcement strategy going forward?
We are still pursuing that. We have some documents to sign and we have some operations underway. We have collaboration taking place. So the answer is that that's a work in progress.
And in terms of just maybe your message as the head of the National Security Council to police officers out there doing their best, many would say under difficult circumstances, you've often identified the challenges or where there's fault, but where those who are actually doing their best, your message to them?
My message to our security services is to continue to put yourselves between the population and the criminal element and to give us the best. We know that the vast majority of policemen and women are decent people who want a good result. Unfortunately, we do have among them, among their colleagues, persons who do not subscribe to that, and we, from time to time, have to extract them. But Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, we have our shortcomings, but we do have, at the end of the day, a number of people who even literally put their lives on the line day and night, because there are other citizens who have no difficulty in taking people's lives in furtherance of their nefarious activities. So I want to encourage the police officers, especially those who have the responsibility for gathering information, going after people who are engaged in criminal conduct, so that they can be held accountable. And that is the only way that we will ameliorate this threat and bring the situation to a point where you don't have this continuous killings and kinds of people looking for easy life by threatening and menacing others. That is what the objective is. And those officers, they are the ones under law. We can't look to the teachers or the priests or the nurses or the doctors to do it. We have to look to the security services. And they have a commitment, they have the authority to act, and they have the responsibility to act with integrity.
And on another matter, if you don't mind, Prime Minister, have you had, upon your return, a detailed briefing or update on the matters concerning...
I've just got in half an hour ago, so certainly, Joel, I wouldn't have had that.
I know you have an acting Prime Minister who's been very much on top of things and having media conferences and so on, and one of those things were issues concerning the Auditor General, the Finance Ministry, Central Bank, and so on. Or even while you were abroad, were you getting any sort of updates on that particular matter, and do you have any thoughts on it?
Well, fortunately nowadays, when I travel, whether I'm in St. Anne's or whether I'm in Mumbai, it's very easy to be in. I've been continuously in communication with the acting Prime Minister. I read the papers in the same way as if I was here. I've seen what has gone on, but I can tell you though, if I try to answer your question, I'm quite surprised at this development and very disappointed that it would have happened. There's an investigation taking place, and I, like everybody else, would want to see what the investigation says, because this is not the kind of thing that I anticipated. I was first informed that there was a problem in, I think it was early March. As a member of Parliament, I am very familiar with Auditor General reports going to the Parliament. I've been in Parliament now for decades, and it's a standard thing. It doesn't turn the country upside down. On this occasion, something happened which I'm still quite distressed about it, because as Prime Minister of the country, I don't take very lightly a public official, especially one involved in audit, telling me and the rest of the world that the Minister of Finance has been engaged in backdating the books. That's a very, very serious allegation, and it has far-reaching consequences. I could tell you, a few years ago, an error was made at the Ministry of Energy with the numbers that came forward from the Ministry of Energy about gas production. When the rating agencies came to look at us to be able to rate the country with serious consequences for its financial situation, that error was picked up by the Minister of Finance. And the Minister of Finance drew it to the attention of the Ministry of Energy, and it was rectified. The rating agency, knowing of this, that there was an error, that was corrected, took the position where, look, you know, the fact that you had to correct something here mean that there might be something here I should be concerned about, and this could result in you all being downgraded. And that was just a number from the Ministry of Energy. So you could imagine when the Auditor General is saying to the world that the Minister of Finance has backdated the finances and all kinds of interpretations being put on that alleged action. So I knew about this in March, and this thing came to a head in a public spat towards the end of April. And I just had to look on helplessly as Prime Minister. I had no role in it, none whatsoever. Because it's all a matter between office holders who are specifically put to handle specific actions in handling our finance. No role in there for the Office of the Prime Minister. I don't work with or direct the Comptroller of Accounts, the Treasury Department, none of it. Least of all the Auditor General. But I do know that a problem arose for cause requiring sane and sober behavior. And just as we've done in many other things, it has been converted into an unnecessary, dangerous bacchanal. I too will wait on the outcome of the investigation to see and to confirm what has happened here.
This is a quick follow-up. Do you have confidence while the issue is being dealt with by those office holders that the business of state that they would have to communicate with and so on with each other will continue to go forward while this matter is being dealt with?
Yes, because the way we've conducted our business as a government, it is my view, and I have confidence that people who are reasonable will treat the government statements as statements requiring their serious consideration. There are those who prefer other statements. I believe that the people who have a respect for the government of Trinidad and Tobago would give value to the government's statements in this matter. The government is being challenged, and the matter is now in the court, as a matter of fact. And these are places where one can separate fact from fiction. And I hope in the not too distant future, this matter will be clarified and be put behind us. Thank you all very much. Thank you for coming. And we look forward to seeing you again soon. Thank you.
This is TTT. Live for local.